It's this way. There we go. So, today we're going to be learning how to write an exponential equation from a graph and a table. And this is actually easier than the word problems. So, first thing you need to do is identify, we're going to start with the table one. We're going to identify our y-intercept. And so our initial amount is when x is always 0. So right here, when I look, I can see when x is 0, my y is 30. So I know that this right here is going to be my a, my initial value. So it's always when your x is 0. So you're just finding your y-intercept or when your x is 0. And so when I write my equation, I already know that's going to be y equals ab to the x. And now I can fill in my a, which is going to be 30. My b is my growth or decay. So I need to figure out, looking right here, what's happening over and over again from 30 to 60 to 120. What are they doing each time? Not adding. Multiplying. They're multiplying by 2. So each time they're multiplying by 2, so my growth factor is just going to be 2. No adding to 1, subtracting from 1, that's only when they're talking about percentages. And then to the x. And so sometimes you're not going to notice, like, what is it being multiplied by? And so what you could always do right below, you can write it right here, you just say you divide the last y value by the y value before. In case you don't see what's going on. So if I want to figure out what my growth or decay factor is, and you couldn't tell that that was 2, all you have to do is take the last one, so right here, 1920, and divide it by the y before, which is 960. What do you end up getting when you divide those two in your calculator? 2. And so no matter what, if you don't see it right away, you could always take the last one divided by the one before, and it gives you this growth factor. Does that make sense so far? Mm-hmm. Cool. The second one we're going to do today is basically the same thing, except it's a graph. And so a lot of us have trouble with like points and things like that. All you're going to do here is just make this into a table and do the exact same thing. So we're making our table. So when you see a graph, just make your table. And so I can see when my x is 0, what is my y here? 2. When my x is 1, my y is 6. Does everyone see that? Mm-hmm. When my x is 2, my y is 18. That's the 3 points they give us there. So I'm just putting them on the table. Then I'm doing the exact same thing. Does anyone see the pattern that's happening over and over again? Not dividing. Multiplying, right? So remember, we can take 18 divided by 6, which is 3, or we can just look at it and kind of find it out. But sometimes it's going to be multiplied by a fraction. So that's why we always want to put it in our calculator. So we know 3 is going to be our growth factor. And then our initial values when x is 0, so right here, which is 2. And so this is our answer. Does that make sense? So to check your work, I always want you doing this. Remember that table in your calculator? So in your calculator, click on table and see where it says y equals, right? Yeah. You're going to type in, let's start with this equation, y equals 30 parentheses 2 to the x. So it should look, and then you click enter a couple times, and make sure you see the exact same table that's up here. You guys see the exact same table as what's on my board? Yes, ma'am. Perfect, so you know you got it right. So remember, multiple choice questions, if they have a bunch of equations and they're saying which one represents the table, there was a lot of that in your pretest. All you have to do is put it in your table and figure out which table is the same. Same over here, let's put this equation in. So go back to table and let's put 2 parentheses 3 to the x. How do you do the h? With the little caret thing? That was right. Yeah, so do 2 parentheses, 3 parentheses, and then that carrot right there. And then X is right there. Yep. And then do you guys see that you get the same table, 0, 2, 1, 6, 2, 18? That's really all we're doing. So there's like a drilling hill worksheet I want you guys to start on. So we're gonna, one side is tables, one side is graphs. So I'm gonna just do one with you, just so you can see what we're, just make sure you know what you're doing. And so let's try this one right here, number 2. So first I want to identify my y-intercept. Who can raise their hand for a brain buck and tell me what is my A or my y-intercept for number 2?
Is it 10?
Yep, 10. Because at 0, we know that my A is 10. So right there where it says A, you're going to put 10. Then you can see that see how it's a little bit unclear what it's being multiplied by? So let's put that into our calculator. And how do we put a fraction into our calculator? ND, right? So do 1 over 100 and then divided by ND 1 over 10. And what do you guys get? 1 over 100 divided by 110. So we're just taking the last one, the last y divided by that y. Not 10. 1 over 100 divided by, so it should look something like this, 1 over 10. And what's the answer you end up getting? 1 over 10. Did everyone get 1 over 10? Maybe you forgot that 1. So 1 over 10 is what it's being multiplied. So all you're putting in your calculator is the last y, 1 over 100, divided by the one before, 1 over 10, and you equals 110. That's my Now let's write our equation. Y equals, and your A is 10, parentheses, and your B is 110 to the X. Now there's 2 options you can do. See where it says f of -5? So you can either plug that in for x in your calculator or look at your table and find that -5, what is your y? So the 2 options when this just means instead of x, plug in that. So I'm going to write this equation like that. And instead of x, I'm going to plug in -5 in my regular calculator, not the table. You could go into the table and type the irregular equation in and find what x is at -5. Does everyone get, so you're just typing in your calculator 10 parentheses ND 110 to the -5. What do you end up getting? Yes, 1 million. Did everyone get that? Cool. So that's one example with the table. And I'll do one more example with the graph before I let you guys know. So I'm going to look at this graph. So looking at this graph, first of all, see all those answer choices? Don't even look at your paper right now. Just look at my board. See all those answer choices? Yeah. If I totally forget what to do, what could you do on your calculator? Plug it in. Put it into table and figure out which one has those same points. So let's look at this. First of all, are there any plus? Did we learn about plus yet in exponential functions? No. So cross that one out. That makes sense. Then let's write our table. So x and y, so 0, 1, 2, and 3. So if x is 0, what is my y right here? It's really small, but it says 128. It's not on your paper. It's actually on your the back of your notes. Yeah, flip the page over. Yeah, right in back of your notes. So flip it over. Yeah. And then at 1, we can see it's at 64. That must be 1. No, that's right. 64. At 2, it's at 32. And at 3, it's at 14. That's it. Okay. So I'm just writing the table that goes to that graph right there. So what is my initial value here? What is it? 128, right? It's when x is 0. So that should be in the front. Which one doesn't have 128 in the front?
C, D, and A.
C, D, and A. So automatically I know it's probably E. But you can always put it into your calculator, right? And so now to figure out what's going on from here to here, I can take the last two numbers and do what with it? Divide it, right? Okay, I can't see the numbers. This is 16, not 14. Yeah, that's a 16 on there. I just can't see. So what's 16 divided by 32?
So,
You did 32 divided by 16. Make sure the last divided by 0.5 or 1/2. So that's where they get this 1/2 from. How do you get 1/2? See how 0.5 in your calculator? What buttons do I press to get it as a fraction? A, B. That makes me a fraction, but those little arrows, just give it to me. Perfect. All right, so that's all our lesson is really for today. It's pretty easy. Do we agree? Like, so all you're doing is practicing. I have the answer key up here, and you can stamp. And then once you're done with your practice for today, your ticket out the door and belt the mat. So this is pretty simple. If you want me to go over it with you, I can.
Yeah, just take it over.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Sure. Let me just pause this.